Hello, everybody. Welcome to Cooking with Mo and Deb.
Hey, y'all.
So glad you could be here with us. You doing okay, Mo?
I'm doing great. It's been a week or two since we've seen each other.
Yeah, it has.
So we are getting together to cook some pies.
I don't know what it is about this time of year, but I always like to
Yes.
make homemade pies.
Me too.
I don't know why. I love
know.
eating
And
them
y'all,
for sure.
let me tell you, this woman right here can make some pies.
Do you remember when we did the pie
Yes,
crust class?
It was great. She did a pie crust class, and several of my friends and I went and learned how to make these pie crusts.
I'm not her only friend, believe it or
I
not.
know.
She has a few others.
Can you believe it? I do have a couple of others.
So we did. She came to my house with some friends, and I showed them how I make a pie crust. That don't mean it's the perfect way, but it is how I like to do
it. It is perfect in my book.
But it's so easy, wouldn't it? Didn't you think it was so easy?
So easy and so good. And y'all, you can buy the pre-made pie crust if you want to, and I do sometimes.
I do too.
But these taste so much better.
So we're going to show you how. So we're going to get our stuff together, and we're going to come back, and I'm going to show you how to make a pie crust. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. It's time to learn how to make your very own pie crust. First thing is 3 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of salt, a half a cup of shortening, and 1.5 sticks of butter. And then you're just going to take your pastry cutter, or a fork would work, and cut that butter and shortening all into that flour. It just takes a minute. I had a little trouble there because my butter was a little too, it wasn't frozen, but it was kind of hard. So you might want to sit that butter out for just a few minutes and make it a little bit easier on yourself. So just going to continue cutting the butter and the shortening into the flour mixture until you get it all mixed up together really good. So we're still mixing in that butter and shortening. You want to get it to where it's mixed in good. It kind of looks like little granules in your flour. Just keep on pressing the flour down or the butter down. I think I've about got it now. Just mixing it up a little bit more with my fork. And now to make it all stick together, you're going to add 6 tablespoons of ice cold water. There was the rest of my water. So I'm going to just stir that up, get it kind of mixed up a little bit, and then I'm going to go in with my hands and just mix until I get it all sticking together. You'd be surprised that it will work if you just keep mixing it. Now, if for some reason yours does not stick together good, you can add a little bit more water. Don't add a whole lot at once, maybe a tablespoon or even a half a tablespoon. You won't need very much at all. But you're just going to mix until you've got all that flour sticking together. Now, this recipe makes 2 pie crusts, 2 deep dish pie crusts. So you're going to break it apart into half in one bag. We're going to put the other half into another bag, and you're going to store them in the refrigerator. Now, if you're going to use the recipe or your crust right away, it needs to at least be in the fridge for 15 to 30 minutes. And if you're not going to use it right away, you can put it in the freezer and leave it in the freezer for up to 2 weeks. So now it's time to take one of them out and start making our crust, or rolling out our crust. It's been about 30 minutes, and I dusted my mat with some flour and put a little bit of flour on my hands. And now I'm going to put a little bit of flour on that rolling pin, and we're just going to roll. Now, my pastry mat has measurements on it. If you want to use that, you can. I have a deep dish pie plate that I'm going to put this on, so I kind of know what size I need to make it. But you really want to roll your crust out really thin. It needs to be pretty thin, so I keep rolling here until I've gotten it, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch. And I like flipping mine over because it seems like I can get it rolled out really evenly when I flip it over each time. But when it gets so big, you can't really do that. So here's the way I get it into the pie plate. I roll it up on my mat and move that pie plate over close and then roll it back out into the plates. There we go. Now we're just going to kind of fit the pie crust into the pie dish that you're using. And if there's a lot of it hanging over the edge, I tear that off of the edge because I don't need a whole lot extra. But you can turn that under if you want to keep all that crust. You can turn it under and use it in the top part of your pie crust. And you can see how I am making the edging just by pushing my thumb in between my 2 fingers on the other hand to make a little edge. And I'm going to do that all the way around my pie crust. We're finished. The pie crust is finished. Voila!
Ta-da!
There it
Or
is.
voila!
I did make a little edge. It's not that pretty, but it'll come out
It's
fine
pretty.
whenever it bakes up. But if you want to just take a fork and make a little edge around, you can do that.
Now that's a pretty pie crust, and it's going to be delish.
So you might wonder, how do I know if I bake the crust before I put my filling in?
I've always wondered that.
Well, here's what you do.
Okay.
Whatever your recipe says.
Okay.
Your recipe might say,
what if it doesn't say?
it will. Your recipe might say use a already baked pie crust. That means you bake your crust ahead of time.
Okay.
Your recipe might say add your filling to your unbaked pie shell.
Okay.
Then you would do that and bake it with your pie.
Okay.
So in this case, we're going to bake it with a filling. I'm not going to tell you what kind because we're going to do that in another video. But that's how you know if you need to bake your crust ahead of time.
Okay.
So if you have a little bit of extra pie crust left over, I have just an itty bitty piece, and I wanted to show you something that I do sometimes. Whatever size you have, just roll it out flat. So I'm just going to mash this piece out flat. As flat as I can. I'm mashing it. I'm just going to make it kind of thin. And then I happen to have these little bitty cookie cutters. Here's a leaf. Let's do this one. Here's a little leaf. So I'm going to make a little leaf imprint here. And there you go. And I'm going to bake these. Here's a pumpkin. I think I have enough room here to cut out this pumpkin. And so what I would do is bake these, and they make such pretty little decorations
so you put them on top
your
of your
pie.
And you know what else you can do, Dan, like that? You can make a batch and a half of pie crust dough and spread, roll one out thin, lay it on top, or cut it out and then lay it on top of your pie.
Sure, exactly. So remember, this recipe makes 2 crusts.
Oh, that's right.
So you can definitely do that. I've only used one. You divide it in half, and you can put one in the fridge for later and use your one for now. I divided it in half and only used one, but if you want to do a top crust, you have your 2 pie crusts right there to do that with. So back to these though, my little cookie cutter pieces right there. So what I think they're really pretty on a pumpkin pie.
Yes.
So you could bake these separately and then bake your pumpkin pie, and near the end lay them right on top, and there you go. There you have some little decorations on there. So that's making a homemade pie crust. It's easy. Give it a try.
Give it a try, y'all. I promise it's so much better.
Yeah.
Bye. Happy baking.